breaking news from News 8.
Our Sunrise Smart Start begins with breaking news this morning. Rochester police investigating a double shooting overnight as the gun violence continues in the city.
Officers responding to the area of Sherman and Angle Street for the report of shots fired just before midnight. Police say a man in his 30s was shot in the upper body and taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. A second man, also in his 30s, was shot in the lower body. His injuries are described as non-life-threatening. No suspects in custody. If you have any information, call 911.
One man has died after a shooting on Harris Street in the city, marking the third homicide in a 48-hour span in Rochester. Officers responded around 5 in the afternoon. They say a 28-year-old man was taken to the hospital in a private vehicle, but later pronounced dead. This follows 2 fatal shootings over the weekend on Monroe Avenue and Flower City Park in Rochester.
Rochester police also investigating a rollover crash. This was on Portland Avenue late last night. Officers responding to that area around 10:30 p.m. Officials say 2 people were taken to the hospital with what are described as minor injuries. 2 other vehicles were struck, but nobody was inside. No arrests have been made. Well, America's longest war is over. The last U.S. troops left Monday with Americans and Afghan allies still left behind. The State Department promising to bring them home, but Republicans on Capitol Hill are calling for Congress to step in.
Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer is live with us this morning. Kelly, good morning. So the big question, of course, with the U.S. troops gone, how does the Biden administration plan to get the remaining Americans and allies out of the country?
Good morning, Mark and Leah. Well, that's the big question right now. The State Department is defending that they made, quote, extraordinary efforts to give Americans every chance to get out before the August 31st deadline. They said even in some cases walking them to the airport. But they say for those that remain, which they believe are less than 200, maybe even closer to 100 Americans, they are going through a manifest, calling and texting them to try and get them out. He said for those that wanted to stay and decide later maybe they want to return home, he says the U.S. will get them out.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. We do expect to hear from the president later today. According to the Pentagon, more than 122,000 people have been evacuated from Afghanistan, including over 5,000 American citizens.
Well, southern states like Louisiana and Mississippi still feeling the effects of Tropical Depression Ida. The storm, once a Category 4 hurricane, actually reversed the flow of the Mississippi River for a period of time and left the entire city of New Orleans without power. The Biden administration has approved a disaster declaration for the state of Louisiana. Federal officials say more help is on the way from FEMA and the Red Cross as well.
2 people are dead and several others injured after a highway collapse in Mississippi. Officials say part of the highway was washed away by rising water levels from Tropical Depression Ida. Rescue teams and emergency personnel are currently searching for more survivors.
What a contrast. I mean, all that trouble down there, of course, around these parts. We are looking at a spectacular week weather-wise and a nice start on this Tuesday, James.
Yeah, not bad at all. Thinking about those folks that are impacted by that storm system as they pick up the pieces, and it's still going to chug along up through Pennsylvania, eventually New Jersey. Going to get hit with this storm system. For us, we're thinking about maybe getting out on the golf course. Temperatures climbing into the upper 70s this afternoon. Clearing skies. Should be a gem of a day out there, especially at the low humidity. I'm looking forward to that as we get throughout the afternoon. We'll have a look at the commute forecast coming up. Mark, Leah.
All right, James. Speaking of the commute, time for another check of the roads with our sunrise traffic. Live look over the thruway at this hour. You see, boy, volume is light and flowing along just fine. Thank you very much. One accident to pass along is in the city, Rochester, J Street, right near Mount Read Boulevard. But apart from that, should be a smooth commute so far this morning.
Speaking of commuting, now for our continuing coverage of Back to School. Today we are focusing on how students who walk to school can get there safely.
Carmela Boykin live from School 28 in the city with what you and your student should know. Carmela, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Leah. I spoke with Officer Carlos Alvarado from the Rochester Police Department, who says students commuting to school should treat it just like the classroom. You want to surround yourself with good people. This includes keeping good company when walking to or from school. Also, students having clear communication with parents or guardians about what their plan is for after school. Officer Alvarado says knowing emergency contact information by heart is essential.
A lot of kids have their parents' phone numbers or their guardian's phone number stored, and they don't actually have it memorized. Then they lose a cell phone, or it gets misplaced or stolen. Then they have to rely on calling home, and they just don't know it.
Officer Alvarado also advises parents to avoid distracted driving in school zones and use extra precautions, as smaller children can be harder to see when in a vehicle. Reporting in Rochester, Carmela Boykin, News 8. Mark and Leah.
All right, Carmela, thank you. Some really important advice there. Rochester City Schools returning for full in-person classes this year, beginning September 8th.
And when it comes to back to school, many parents are also wondering about potential vaccine mandates for teachers and staff. Governor Hochul said last week she supports those mandates in schools. She also released guidance saying all students and staff must wear masks indoors.
Our position has always been, if that type of a mandate is going to come, then it would be appropriate that it comes from the state and is dictated in law, as opposed to having individual school districts and boards of education making those decisions on an individual basis.
The Rochester City School District does have a vaccine mandate for teachers and staff in place. The district will also require weekly testing for those who are not vaccinated.
New York State's eviction moratorium expires today, and that could mean eviction notices for thousands locally. Yesterday, the Rochester Citywide Tenant Union rallied outside the Hall of Justice, calling for that eviction freeze to be extended. Monroe County and the City of Rochester are choosing to opt out of the $2.7 billion statewide rental emergency fund program. Local tenants in need of help must apply through the Monroe County Department of Human Services if they want assistance.
When people say that, oh, it's just something that happens, get over it, I want you to tell another 10-year-old, like my son, to get over the trauma of seeing his mother ripped from their home.
For us who are getting evicted and now looking for another place, the landlords that has gotten this money, they're raising their rents. Rent is now at least $1,300 for a 3-bedroom. Just because you've had the money from the state, from the government, to fix these properties.
Well, Governor Hochul is facing pressure from Democrats in Congress to extend the state's moratorium on evictions.
A new location will soon be the home to 46 performances at this year's upcoming Fringe Festival. Made on State, located at 510 State Street in downtown Rochester, will be part of the festival for the first time this year and host 9 different productions. The venue will host several productions, music groups, and even an immersive balloon installation. For much more on the 2021 Fringe Fest, head to rochesterfirst.com.
Going to be a lot of buzz about this one at the water cooler. The Bills have to get their roster down to 53, the final 53-man roster later today. They're at 80. They got to make a lot of cuts by 4 o'clock this afternoon. Of course, the Bills went undefeated in the preseason. They beat the Lions, the Bears, and the Packers.
Wow. We'll be watching.
We will.
For sure.
Yeah, not the most fun conversation to have.
No, right? You
Look,
wouldn't be...
you're a great player, but not for us.
It's not going to work out. But you know what? There's somewhere for them to go.
I hope so, yes. Maybe the practice squad. 60s for the drive this morning. Clear skies out there. A nice start. Temperatures this afternoon climbing to the upper 70s. Then downhill from here, lower 70s, 60s, even 50s for overnight lows. A chill is in the air tomorrow, the beginning of September. Mark, Leah?
Hard to believe.
Where does the time go?
Yeah, exactly. All right, thank you so much, and thank you for watching News 8 at Sunrise.
That's right. Our time is up as well. Our next update in 30 minutes. CBS This Morning is up next. Have a great day.
Follow News 8 wherever you are. On RochesterFirst.com, Facebook, Twitter, and on our app for news and weather.